This episode of the Cult Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, get up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, give us something to talk about in the post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, or even contribute to the discussion in the episode itself, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture.
Welcome along to a very familiar episode of the Cult Popture podcast. Familiar because it's film franchise Fortnights and we do this every 2 weeks. And so, you know, the format's pretty tried and true by this point. But if you're looking at your podcast feed and you see we're covering the Jurassic Park trilogy and you think, I remember them doing that before, that's because we did. It's around about the 6-year anniversary of the podcast, and we like to redo franchises every now and then. And I'm of course referring to myself, Richard, and I'm once again joined by Alexander Jones, who is feeling a little bit better than he was last week, I presume.
Feeling a little bit better. Hey, everyone. I had a super flu. For all those that were worried that I had COVID when Richard had to do a solo episode last week, no, I had the much cooler super flu. I'm too cool for COVID. That's what I've been telling people. It was horrible, Richard. I've never been sicker in my life. It was insane. I was hallucinating. I was constantly shivering for about 2 days straight. I could barely get a handle on reality.
And who diagnosed this as a super flu?
My flatmate gave it to me, and then I found out there is a super flu going around. So I am doing a bit of guesswork.
Right. When you say super flu, is this like an actual medical term?
I think it is, isn't it? It's like superfood is a medical term, or a scientific term.
Superman is a medical term?
There's a super flu going around.
There's a band called Superflu, apparently.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
It's also just called the common cold, according to Google.
But a flu and a cold is something different, aren't they?
Yeah, but you Google superflu and it says also called common cold.
I'm not trying to claim anything other than I had
the super flu and it was real bad.
Do you reckon there was a...
No, if you had the flu, I had it worse. I just want you to know that.
Yeah. There's some kind of joke I think we can make at the start of this episode about the fact that we've done Jurassic Park before and the fact that dinosaurs are back after being extinct.
And this time they brought their dad.
We're doing them, we're so concerned with whether or not we should redo Jurassic Park that we stopped to
think about whether or not we could. Yeah.
I
also do want to point out that I had the much cooler. I just got a phone call on someone called me on Messenger.
How horrible!
Midway through
Ooh.
that. Craig Major pain in my butt calling me in the middle of a podcast. And now he's typing presumably to say sorry, there was a butt dial. But anyway, I much cooler than I think your made up super flu. I actually had COVID this week as well.
Yeah, that's cool, because the thing everyone has, that's way cooler.
It's cooler than just making up my own sickness.
Unique, elegant,
I actually had super COVID.
Wow.
Yeah, it's actually a thing. I'm pretty sure, my flatmate had it, and then I mentioned it, and the doctors said it was super COVID. It was definitely super COVID.
Okay,
which is crazy.
My flatmate who gave me the super flu actually had already had COVID, and he was like, "This is so much worse than COVID." And I'm assuming that means for every person in the world and not just his specific genetic makeup. So I'm claiming it.
All right. Well, let's end this dick measuring contest and
talk about another dick measuring contest.
I do. So this is our Redux, as I mentioned at the start, and we redo a franchise. We've done it for 3 or 4 years now, and Yeah, the idea, I think, is like, this isn't like a go back and listen to the first time we did it and compare notes. I haven't re-listened to Jurassic Park, the first one. This isn't a sequel to that podcast. It's effectively replacing it. And with a franchise like this, because almost all, well, of the franchises we've redone, most of them have been because there's been new entries in the franchise. And I mean, Jurassic Park is kind of a perfect one to do because the finale of the Jurassic era, they're calling it, has just come out. So we're now able to do what, in theory, is a complete franchise, whereas last time we did it was before Fallen Kingdom had even come out. And
yeah. Much like the producers of Jurassic World, they're hoping you've forgotten about the original episode so that you can look at this one with new, fresh eyes.
So this is the new definitive version, so you don't need to go back and
also,
listen. And we're going to repeat ourselves because a lot of stuff would just come up. And it's been what, like 5 years since we covered that. I booted up my copy of Lego Jurassic World after getting into the Jurassic spirit, and then my save file hadn't been touched since almost exactly 5 years ago. Well, it was 5 years ago, and it was a few days after we released the previous episode when I clearly was in a Jurassic spirit, and then stopped.
You got bit by the bug. The other significant thing is that we're actually splitting the Jurassic saga into two parts. We're doing the Jurassic Park trilogy and then the Jurassic World trilogy. There are a few reasons for this. One, primarily, it is a new way to cover the franchise, that we can spend more time on each film, and also with being sick and various other things preventing us from going to see the new movie in the cinemas, which is actually, I believe, out on digital by the time.
Like, as of today, yeah.
Ah, fantastic. I did not want to pay money to see Jurassic World Dominion, but we'll leave the Jurassic World chat for next week.
Fuck up about Jurassic World, AJ.
Fuck up? I haven't been told to fuck up in a long time.
Well, you've been needed to, and it shows.
Agreed.
Yeah. Tyler Brayley just texted me and said, "Are you recording the Jurassic Park episode tonight?"
What is all these... No one's talking to me.
I'm recording it right now. LOL.
So, yeah, we're going to be talking just about the first three films for this week. The much less planned and advanced trilogy, but possibly the better trilogy. Interesting franchise in that respect, Jurassic Park, because I think... In a world that is overwhelmed with franchises and sequels enough to warrant at least one six-year-old podcast about them, I think that the old chestnut goes that, like, the first one's the best one and then the sequels suck. And, like, we've found in our coverage that is not always the case. The best one's usually in the first half of the series, but it's not always that the returns are as diminishing as some people make them out to be. But this is a franchise where maybe that old chestnut has more meaning.
This is the tree from which the chestnut fell.
From whence the chestnut came. Yeah, like this is a great example of spoilers for our controversial opinions of the Jurassic Park movies. This is a franchise which has a really strong first entry, and then
a lot of fun.
And the only other time this has really happened would be with Steven Spielberg's other kickoff series, Jaws, where...
are you going to say Indiana Jones? But
No. Well, no, I feel like Indiana Jones is
the third one's the best.
And even if you don't think that there's enough argument to be had, whereas Jaws is probably his most similar franchise to Jurassic Park as well.
And I think that's partially intentional as well on Spielberg's part. But I mean, AJ, you keep talking about Jurassic Park, but you haven't told me what the bloody films are.
Well, you're emceeing the episode. What have you got written down?
Well, let me have a look here.
Let me just put on my glasses.
So we've got Jurassic Park, which came out in 1993, which, as you said, is directed by Steven Spielberg. Then we've got The Lost World. Jurassic Park came out in 1997, directed by Steven Spielberg, and then we've got Jurassic Park 3, which came out in 2001, which was directed by his non-union Mexican equivalent, Senor Spielbergo. That was a Simpsons joke. That was directed by Joe Johnston. And then, of course, we have some more movies coming next week, but we won't tell you what those are yet.
Yep.
So,
alrighty.
Jurassic Park, 1993. What is it about?
Jurassic Park 1993, for those who have never seen it, is of course about a paleontologist named Dr. Alan Grant, played by Sam Neill, New Zealand's own Sam Neill.
Born in Ireland.
Him and his GF, played by Laura Dern, who's a paleobotanist, they're invited to come and sort of like put their stamp of approval on this new theme park that's been developed by this madman named John Hammond, called Jurassic Park. And what John Hammond has done is he's found mosquitoes from the Jurassic period, or the dinosaur days, that were frozen in amber.
Not from the Jurassic period. From the Cretaceous
kidding.
period, I believe.
Oh. They went and
when asked about why Michael Crichton, who wrote the novel, asked why he had that incorrect, he was like, Jurassic just sounded cooler. I don't know, I don't care.
Yeah, true. Yep, so he finds these mosquitoes that basically feasted on dinosaur blood, and he's able to extract that blood and make clone dinosaurs. And so this park is rife with dinosaurs. And what could go wrong? Well, according to Jeff Goldblum's character, Dr. Ian Malcolm, who's a chaos-tician, anything that will go wrong. So the monsters, the dinosaurs escape thanks to some insider trading that's going on between the guy from Seinfeld and
Dennis Nedry.
Not Jerry Seinfeld himself, mind you.
Not Jerry, he wouldn't.
I just wanted to make some money. And so the dinosaurs have escaped, and the human characters are split up. Dr. Alan Grant has to take care of a couple of little kids, which he hates. He hates kids. Yeah. Some of them smell, he says. That's one of my favourite lines in this movie. And it's all about man versus nature. Is it right to play God this way, or are we just standing on the shoulders of giants without doing any of the work ourselves? What happens when you take a 65 million year old species and put it next to humans? Who wins? Who will win?
Yeah, it's a real David and Goliath story.
Guy who's in complete understanding of a David and Goliath story is like small thing versus big thing. Because thematically the dinosaurs are the Davids in Jurassic Park as well. Like if you think about it, they're like, because Goliath is,
I guess, like the compies, yeah.
Yeah, sure, but I'm
because they're
Goliath is the symbol of arrogance and obstructiveness, and that's exactly what the humans are in the Jurassic Park.
But this time, David wins. So the films is based on a novel called Jurassic Park, directed by what? Written by Michael Crichton, who you also wrote Westworld, which was adapted into the TV show.
Another theme park based on a wacky concept.
Yeah, wacky theme park book, and
the wacky theme park author.
Yeah, the wacky theme park guy, and so before the book was even published, the Michael Crichton had demanded a non-negotiable fee of $1.5 million for the film rights, and each studio was bidding for them with a director already attached, kind of thing. So the bidding war was Warner Brothers and Tim Burton, Columbia Pictures and Richard Donner, and 20th Century Fox and Joe Dante. Bid for the rights, but Universal acquired them with Spielberg. Apparently, James Cameron said that he wanted them, but the bidding war ended a few days before he found out about it or was able to get his bid in. But he has since said Spielberg was the right choice because he would have made it a lot more like Alien, a lot more kind of
a lot scarier.
And he said, that it needed to be a film for kids, and and Spielberg was the right person for that.
Let's talk about those other suggested directors, though. Richard Donner makes sense, I think.
Yeah.
Joe Dante, in a sense, I think he has some Spielbergian traits.
Well,
that he
yeah,
probably
the scary but still for families.
Yeah, exactly. Tim Burton, holy shit, I did not know he was like in the running. That very different movie, I think, had Tim Burton got his paws on it.
Yeah, and this is like same year as Nightmare Before Christmas, which I know he didn't direct, but
No,
yeah, so
that's
this is
fine,
like
it's okay.
so yeah, very sort of different. Yeah, I mean, I guess the closest thing to this that Tim Burton's done would be the Planet of the Apes reboot.
I guess so, and I guess that's not the Burton-esque sort of curly-whirly, spirally monster movie that I'm envisioning his Jurassic Park would be, but you never know. Like I feel like a big part of Spielberg's connection to the first film is all to do with like the kind of breakthrough special effects that were like the trailblazed with Jurassic Park, and so
and then was later like The Mask was advertised as like using the team from Jurassic Park.
But yeah, I feel like that maybe wouldn't have happened with someone like Tim Burton, and you'd end up with probably like, I want to say like stop motion.
Yeah.
You know,
well, because there was a
like-
lot of like industrial line magic was, really at the forefront of this thing. And I mean, this is one of the big talking points people still talk about Jurassic Park is how the effects still hold up, and it's that mix of animatronics and CGI, and the CGI was great for the time. Some of it has dated, I'll admit, but yeah, some of it is
that I don't think looks very great is when they first see the big brachiosaur.
Yeah, the first like the big reveal shot doesn't look that great anymore.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean a lot of the really up close stuff is like obviously great.
Oh, and
it's
the
real.
T-Rex breaking through the gate in the rain looks like. Yeah. Well, I realized, I think I maybe realized this when we covered it last time, but watching that, I was like, never in my life have I considered that this isn't real. Like, I've always bought in so deeply into that scene.
Didn't realize it was a movie.
100% real. Yeah, I thought it was actually happening. I thought I was.
thought it was happening to me. You're like, how am I bone dry? But it's raining right over there. Speaking of this, what's your history with Jurassic Park?
So. I must have seen the first and second one plenty of times as a kid, but somewhere in between the first two and the third one, when I was like 7 or 8, I suddenly decided that Sam Neill was my favorite actor.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember my dad took me to see Jurassic Park 3 because I was obsessed with Sam Neill.
And you were dressed as Alan Grant.
Yeah. And
had your Alan Grant pajamas on.
And post seeing Jurassic Park 3, almost second fiddle to Back to the Future, Jurassic Park was quite a special series for me. I remember I had for years, I don't know where it is now, but for years I had the Trilogy pack on DVD, and it was in this boring, basic grey set. It wasn't like a stylized pack at all.
I think I have the same thing, but on Blu-ray,
Yeah. And I would watch them a lot. I remember I used to swear by the third one for a lot longer than I'd be comfortable admitting through high school. But I mean, the first one, it's Spielberg's best movie. I think it's probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest movie ever made. Like.
You're just so like uncommittal with it. I think it's I don't know, shut up. It's probably like
I like genuinely I think I was thinking about this today is like it looks so good, and the combination of like family movie with scary stuff is so uncommon now that it's such a good formula for a movie.
Yeah.
But on top of all of that as well, it's also just like a fantastic story. It's got fantastic character arcs in it, and more than that, it's intelligent. It's a really intelligent movie in terms of what it's saying and what it does with its characters.
Capitalism.
And I think that is that is part of it, I guess.
I know, it's just funny, just like that's my entire contribution to the conversation. Capitalism.
I think that intelligence is one of the crucial things that's missing from, I'll say, a lot of the sequels, maybe not all of them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so I would quite proudly state that this is one of, if not the greatest films ever made. And I think that I mean, and it would be up against what, like, Back to the Future, I would say, would be in the very same kind of thing. And I think that it makes sense that the greatest film of all time would probably be that kind of, like, genre of that film you watch when you're transitioning from kids' films to, like, adult films. That you know, just that kind of, like, that's something for everyone, family films, essentially. And because, you know, it makes sense to be, oh no, Inglourious Bastards is the greatest film of all time, but when it's not, when it's for, like, a more niche audience, it's
Well, it's a good question. Does the greatest film of all time need to be one that is accessible to everyone?
Yeah. And yeah, yeah, Jurassic Park is, yeah, certainly a contender. When we did the director project on YouTube, and I would make the little intro videos of the directors, and so I would watch, like, you know, a bunch of videos about the director and a bunch of interviews with the director, and there was this really, really fascinating one I watched it was like a 60 minutes type thing where it was going around Steven Spielberg's, like, compound and talking to him about all his different projects, and it was more like a career retrospective kind of thing. And they were talking to him about, like, one of the things they said was that, like, you know, people are now trying to aim for these, like, Spielberg-sized hits, and do you feel to blame for the death of cinema because they're spending so much money on all these original projects now? And it's interesting that we're still in the same problem, that, like, only these really big things are getting funded, but it's no longer, like, in Spielberg's time, it was like they were trying to find the next E.T. or Jaws, you know. And he sort of said, you know, that's not my cross to bear, that I made these big epic films and now everyone wants to replicate that. But a large sort of part, and the whole tone of the interview was like, how does it feel knowing that you haven't won a Best Director Oscar? You probably never will because you're so over the hill. And how does it feel, you know, that your best work is behind you, and now what have you got? This interview was in 1992. A year later, he released Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, and won Best Director for Schindler's List.
Wow. What a twist.
Yeah. And so, like, to the idea that in 1992, Spielberg was talked about as, like, how does it feel knowing that your career is over and that you're never going to make anything good again? And then made the best film of all time, and like twice. It made two of the best films of all time in the same year with, yeah, it's crazy that.
I'd also say Jurassic Park is, like, Spielberg's, like, best, like,
Spielberg
boiled
film
down. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, it's what makes him good in one movie instead of several. You know?
Yeah. And so for my history with Jurassic Park, it's kind of interesting. I was working at the warehouse at the time, so this would have been
when it came out. 1993.
2011 or 2012, so I would have been, you know, 19, almost 20. And I was talking to someone, and someone, I remember talking to someone, they couldn't believe I'd never seen Jurassic Park. And so I hadn't seen it until I was, almost 20. And they're like, oh, you know, you got to support Sam Neill. And all of a sudden I was like, you know, just like I've just never gotten around to it, and, like, I don't know. And I think it's one of those things that maybe as a child I thought it would be too scary, so I avoided it. And then I think I just bought the Trilogy pack and just thought, oh, you know, I'll just watch the films, and sat down and watched all three of them over the course of a weekend or a week or whatever. And fuck, they're good. Fuck, Jurassic Park's good. And like, yeah, it is one of those things that it's just, I'm just fully real, you know, you watch the film and you go like, oh no, like, it's one of those films that absolutely lived up to the hype. And yeah, it's so rare for a film to actually do that, to really, really live up to the hype and genuinely be one of the greatest films ever made, and to have that experience, you know, relatively late in life as a
It's not often that
film
you
consumer.
and I both have the same sort of burning love for a movie and don't have the same basic experience of growing up with it. Like, when we've talked about movies that we've loved.
Well, I mean, we have it with
often...
Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, but there's a few other things.
Oh,
where
yeah,
it's
but
like...
I like Crash Bandicoot more than you.
I think I like Crash Bandicoot a bit more than you. No, because I messaged you the other day and I said to you, there's a scene when they're flying on the helicopter to Isla Nublar, which is where Jurassic Park is being built. and Doctor, no, he's not a doctor. John Hammond is just a guy. He tells them to buckle up because they're about to land, and Alan Grant goes to grab his seatbelt, and he only has 2 buckles. He doesn't have a plug, and so he can't find the other plug, so he just ties it together. Right, it's a very incidental scene, which I think
it's supposed to be
like
that like even it's starting to already go wrong.
Yeah, exactly. But years later, I'd probably seen the film a dozen times growing up, and then years later, when I'm on fucking 9gag or whatever in 2011, I see and I think I read it on a Cracked article. Actually, it's probably where I read it because that's where I read everything when I was in high school.
This period,
Yeah, and it pointed out that the movie is about the theme of the movie. Well, one of the themes of the movie is life finds a way. Life will always work out. Finds a way. And one of the things it points out is like a big plot point in the movie is that the dinosaurs are all bred as females so that they can't mate, but because they used frog DNA to fill in some of the blanks. Some frogs have the ability to change their sex, and so they end up laying eggs
in a single sex environment. They can,
exactly. Yeah, and it pointed out that this scene at the start is literally a character takes a female end of a seatbelt and another female end of a seatbelt, and they won't go together, but he finds a way and ties them together, and it's a microcosm for what the movie is about.
That's essentially how lesbian sex works as well.
I've still got a super flu. And when I first read that, I was like, wow, blow my mind. Like, it's crazy that all these years later, I'm still finding new things to love about this film. And I mentioned to you how that like blew my mind when I first read it, and you're like, oh yeah, I'd seen that before I saw the movie.
So I had seen that exact thing, and like so many, like, because it was made into like memes, and I remember like those kind of things, and seeing them on Reddit, and it's just like, oh, in Jurassic Park, Alan Grant has 2 female parts of seatbelts and ties them together because Alan Grant finds a way. And none of that made any sense to me. I was like, why are you saying he finds a way? What's the relevance of that phrasing?
He's scrappy. That's his character trait.
Yeah. And then the whole thing of like, yeah, okay. And then I was like, is this something that... Because the thing that I always wondered about it as well before I'd seen the movie is like, is this something that's like really subtle or like... but then watching the movie, I was like, no, they make a point of showing you this. Is this a detail just people didn't notice for like 20 years after the movie came out, that these lines of dialogue and you see him do this, but it's like, oh no, it's because I didn't know the thing about the they're all being bred female. And then I was like, oh yeah, okay. So when I saw that scene, I was like, yeah, this is what's happening.
Right. It's almost like a dumb piece of IMDb trivia that like a character, there's a famous line in the movie, life finds a way, and a character finds a way to do something. And it's just like, storytelling is characters finding a way to do something. Yeah. You can't claim that as subtext.
But one other like piece of media that I consider, I have read the Jurassic Park book as well. I read it probably around the same time when I remember reading it backstage in the green room, so it was when I was still studying it, so it would have been 2012-ish. And it's a really good
play
book
of Jurassic Park.
I wish.
So you're reading it in the green room. Who would you play in the play?
Hammond.
Ah, very nice.
Yeah, I absolutely would. I actually would play Hammond.
I'd be the fucking lawyer that gets fucking...
I think
I'd be Nedry. I want to be Nedry. That'd be a fun
it's not
role.
about who you want to be, it's who you get cast as.
Okay. Then I am Nedry as well.
I think the sort of roles I played, and also being one of the only people able to grow a beard, I would tend to get the older characters. And, dyeing my beard white or, whatever, I think that's the kind of character I would have played. But it's a really good book, and it's really interesting, the differences between the two, and we might talk about it in Jurassic Park 3, but that Jurassic Park 3 is essentially just the bits from the book that weren't adapted in the first film. And yeah, the ending of the book is very different as well, and it created problems going into the Lost World, and I'll talk about that when we get to Lost World. But yeah, So you liked the movie Jurassic Park?
I really liked it, and this is the first time I've watched it since we covered it for the podcast back in 2017. I want to say, and I just seeing the like various pieces of storytelling and how everything wraps up. One thing I'd never noticed was how little Jeff Goldblum actually is in the movie after he gets knocked out.
Because
Like,
you remember, because he's
much,
the main character in the second one, you remember like,
yes.
oh yeah, he's a huge part of the franchise. Yeah,
but he basically is down for the count after the first big set piece and is just sitting shirtless on a table for most of the rest of the movie. But one thing, speaking of Nedry, who's Wayne Knight's character, I really love that plot thread. I think it
was lost on me at a younger age that because you're just like, just disgruntled employee, but the way it actually sets up everything, yeah.
Well, it's great because the idea of there being like, dirty deals from rival companies wanting to get in on the secret. So of course there would be corporate espionage, I guess, going on. So I think that's already a great element to include in it. But the fact that Nedry's actions is actually what causes the security shutdown at the park, which makes lets the dinosaurs escape. I think that's awesome, and also the fact that as soon as he gets out, he gets killed by the frilled neck.
Yeah, well, the thing I love about that all ties back to Nedry is that there's this, it's Hammond's catchphrase, essentially, is spared no expense, that he keeps on going on about how, we spared no expense to make this, but he stiffed one of his employees. The whole reason Nedry's pissed off is because he's not being paid enough. And that's what sets the entire plot in motion, is that John Hammond, spent so much money on this thing, but because he stiffed one guy his paycheck, the entire thing crashed. Yeah,
it's great. And I think it'd be very easy to make like the corporate espionage story carry through the whole plot, but it basically gets them to the inciting incident and then he's killed off because we don't need that story anymore. And with a movie like this, it's very important to know when your storylines are done so that you can continue on with the more exciting ones.
It's interesting as well, the Nedry's death where he gets the Dilophosaurus, I want to say, that has the big like almost peacock kind of like frills and spits venom. Both things invented for Jurassic Park. There's the first set of bones found had like such weak jaw muscles that, or like the jaw bones.
What you mean in the history of
in real life? Yeah, that
right.
the first the jaw they found was like incomplete or something like that, and so they thought it probably didn't hunt because its mouth wasn't actually strong enough to like bite things. And so Michael Crichton came up with the idea that maybe it spat venom to like, wound its enemies and then so it could feast on them. And then in the years since, they've found more complete skeletons and no, it definitely has a strong enough jaw. And the frill thing I think was just completely invented as well.
Wow. There you go.
But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's like was found later on after the films, and like the most famous one being that the real Velociraptor was only like 2 foot tall, not even that. But while filming Jurassic Park, what?
Well, how do you just make that mistake, I guess, is my question. If you've got the skeletons, can you not tell how big it is based on the skeletons?
Well, no, it's just that they wanted like a more imposing threat, so they just lied about it. And they wanted raptors and something that behaved like a raptor, but they wanted it to be this size. So but then while making the movie, they discovered in Utah the remains of a raptor that was almost identical to the one in the film. It's called a Utahraptor. And so it's like, the ones like seen in the film did probably somewhat exist. But of course, now we know a lot more about that the dinosaurs are probably covered in feathers. And I think that's incorporated into Jurassic World Dominion. And it's hinted at in Jurassic World Park 3 because they have little feathers on their head. But then because they realized, they probably had feathers, and so they just put a little tuft in there. But I think there's like a flashback in Dominion where you see actual dinosaurs. But the book, I think, makes much more of a point of this is not what dinosaurs look like. This is what people think dinosaurs look like. So we had to genetically engineer them to look like what people expect. And they make the point of even the fucking brachiosaurs and all these or apatosauruses or whatever, that these big hulking ones that move like super slowly and carefully, that in real life they probably moved a lot faster, but they made them be more docile because that's what people expect to see. And so things about like, oh, actually this didn't look like this, it's like, well, they made it because of dinosaur fiction, you thought it looked like this.
And that all of that is encompassed in one line of dialogue in Jurassic World, I believe.
Yeah.
They're made to look a certain way. Yeah. I really love the scene from where the power shuts off and the T-Rex escaping, basically. That scene right up until Alan Grant and Tim and
Lex.
What's her name? Lex. They're sleeping in the tree together after escaping. That whole thing is just such a perfect sequence of movie. Like, it's so unrelentlessly exciting,
and it's over an hour into the film as well. Like,
that's crazy.
It feels like it's straight
the start
there.
of the movie.
it's such a fucking well-paced movie.
Yeah,
and like
this is so good.
This is something. Pacing is one of those hard things. It's hard to describe, but it's like, you know it when you see it. You know good pacing when you see it. Like, if you can't tell the passage of time in a movie, that's good pacing. And yeah, just the whole movie is just such a breeze to watch. It's everything flows so well onto the next thing that once you start a little bit of, the flipping through channels kind of movie, where if you see part of Jurassic Park, you just have to watch the whole thing because it's so good.
Yeah. So I really love that scene, and I love the kids running away from the raptors in the kitchen. I think what's great about that is that you've built up the whole movie that raptors are like the big bads. The raptors are the villains of the first film, basically. And then you pit them against like the kids, the children, and I think that's such a perfectly
villains of the film.
I think that's such a perfectly designed moment, because it's like, as a kid watching it, like, this is the worst thing you could see, is now they're after the characters that you've probably seen yourself in, and so I think that's really well done, and I think it's really, they look incredible. They're so scary. Have you seen the like stop motion version of that scene?
Oh, years ago, I think, yeah. But
it's really interesting because it is like shot for shot the same. So it's really interesting to see. I guess when you're working with visual effects, you just really need to get exactly what you need down before you shoot it. But yeah, that's a really cool scene. I recommend people watch that if they're interested. It was made by Phil Tippett, who hilariously is credited in this film as dinosaur supervisor and was the subject of a meme a few years back. People were like, "You had one job, Phil." But Phil Tippett has actually gone on to just release a film called Mad God, which I'm dying to see. It looks insane.
Oh, really?
So check that out. But yeah.
Yeah, the Mad God, interesting. Oh, exclusively on Shudder. That's a good sign.
That's a red flag, but if you watch the trailer, it looks insane.
But yeah, talking about the kids as well, interesting change from the books is that the age and interests of the kids was flipped. In the book, Lex is the younger one and Tim is older and into computers, and essentially they just completely swapped the characters. The reason Spielberg did that is the younger actor who plays Tim, he had auditioned for a role in Hook and didn't get it, but then was promised that, because also Hook was Spielberg's previous film as well in 1991, which very much was the like, Spielberg's probably done. But and so he wanted to give a role to this kid, and then he also, and I'm interested if you pick up on this, is that the reason he made the girl older is that he could emphasize or add the subplot of her having a crush on Alan Grant.
No, if anything, Tim has the crush on Alan Grant.
Yeah. But I didn't pick up on that at all, interestingly. The internet was broken recently when it was revealed that Laura Dern was only 23 in this film. She plays Ellie Sattler.
Oh, damn, of course.
And Sam Neill was 45 and Jeff Goldblum was 40. What do you think of that?
I would argue, like, obviously this is a much larger problem than Jurassic Park, but like, I don't think the character is 23.
Yeah.
I think the character's in her like mid to late 30s. Like,
yeah, she She looks a lot more mature. She looks like Bo Burnham. Bo Burnham, all his life has been getting told that he looks like Laura Dern only in, like, specifically in Jurassic Park.
Wow, that's right. Yeah, that's crazy that that she's that much younger than everyone. Because
Yeah, they look like. I mean, apologies to Laura Dern, but they look like the same age.
She's got a very specific older look
The way she
her.
dresses and holds herself and everything as well. Yeah. I want to talk about. I think I mentioned this on the first episode, but I want to talk about it again. That my favorite scene from Jurassic Park is a scene from the book, which is not in the film, and I'll just sort of briefly talk about my experience with the book. One is that you mentioned Dennis Nedry, Wayne Knight's character. His death in the book is it's probably the only time I've ever been scared reading a book. And
right.
I find the idea of being scared of a book so insane, but it's only ever happened to me once. And it's the way his death is described, that it's like he gets blinded with this venom and then he can't see what's going on, but he can feel himself being eaten, is like, the way it's written is terrifying. But my favorite scene in the book is, so in the movie, the way that they find out that the dinosaurs have been breeding is when they're separated. It's Alan Grant and the kids find some eggs and they go, oh, I guess they must have been breeding then. And they go, how about, they said they're all girls. And he's like, oh yeah, actually, like, some bullfrogs can, in a single sex environment can. In the book, the way you find out that the animals have been breeding is that they have this program that scans the track, or it scans the island every hour or so to show how many dinosaurs there are. And so, I'll say you got 2 T-Rexes, one of this, and it was like 22,000 or like 2,000 compies, the really small ones. And then so it keeps scanning and does this. And then one of the characters says, like, oh, I saw some compies over and on this part of the island. And they're like, no, you didn't. You can't have, because they're all over here. And they go, oh, okay. So how many compies have you got on the island? Like, yeah, 2,000. It's scanning for them. And they go, are you scanning how many compies there are? Or are you checking to see if there's the amount you think there is? And they said, well, the program runs faster because they're obviously not going to breed. So we scan for 2,000 compies and we see, is there 2,000 compies? That's how we find out if any of them have died. And they said, okay, well, what happens if you scan for 2001 compies? And they're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, let's try it. And then they scan it and they find there's 2001 compies. And they're like, well, this is impossible, because they would have had to have bred to make new ones. And then they go, okay, well, why don't you then try scanning to just see how many dinosaurs there are on the island? And then they just run an open-ended scan and find out that, like, yeah, there is like 20,000 compies on the island, and there's and all the dinosaurs, there's so many more than they thought. And it's like the way it unfolds in the book is just so well done. And that was like my favorite part of the book. And it was the one thing reading the book that I was like, I wish this was in the movie.
I think it's not as filmic, I think, maybe.
Yeah, sure. But I like the idea, just seeing the screen and then like the number like tick up one. I can imagine that being
true,
being cool. But the big change, and are you sort of done with Jurassic Park, ready to move on, do you think?
I guess so. What did it get on Rotten Tomatoes?
Oh yeah, what do you think?
98.
92.
Oh. Who the hell didn't like this movie?
I know, right?
What a wrong side of history.
Oh, how long do you think dinosaurs appear in the film for?
17 minutes.
15 minutes.
Yeah, something crazy like that.
So, dumb IMDb trivia, and then I'll get on to the transition. So, Laura Dern's reaction to seeing the Velociraptor in the maintenance shed was genuine. It was the first time she actually saw it. So, the fear on her face is not actually acting, it's actually real. And then 2 next to each other pieces of trivia. One of the 2 movies in 1993 in which Laura Dern co-starred with a veteran actor and director. The other movie was A Perfect World, in which Dern co-starred with Clint Eastwood. And then one of 2 1993 releases in which Laura Dern has had a young co-star, Joseph Mazzel, in this movie. The other young co-star of Dern's was TJ Lowther in A Perfect World.
Cool.
But yeah, essentially, Richard Attenborough is a famous director as well. He beat Steven Spielberg for the Best Director Oscar for Gandhi beat E.T. in 1982.
Oh, and he plays John Hammond.
And he plays John Hammond, yeah. And he's David Attenborough's brother.
Yeah. John Hammond
is so good in this.
He's so good. The actor's so good. The character is like just such a brilliant design to put like he's essentially like almost the villain of the series, and like certain characters really don't like him, but he's never doesn't go to jail or anything.
Yeah.
And I think there's a Shakespearean quality to him, being like
King Lear.
My empire is my dinosaur empire that falls apart and he nearly loses what he holds most dear.
Like King
and
Lear.
then even going forward in the sequels, or in the first sequel, he's still kind of like doesn't really learn his lesson. And I think that because he dies in the novel, correct?
Yes, in the novel, he's very much like a ruthless businessman, like evil sort of type, and that was a sort of last minute change. And I think Spielberg, reading the book, despite the fact that Hammond's clearly like evil in the book and acts evilly, Spielberg sort of resonated with that, his obsession with spectacle, and so I think made the character a bit more relatable. And it's such a great character choice, because it's like, yeah, they have this big debate at the table, and yeah, there's the whole argument of like, is he wrong, is he right? And yeah, in the book he falls down a cliff and then gets the compy death from the second film, which is like the compies are like the tiny little dinosaurs, and they just peck at him, and it's a very satisfying, in the novel, it's a very satisfying, like getting killed in the most, like having these animals that you underestimated tearing you apart, and because of your own hubris.
I wonder if it would have been still appropriate to kill him off, even this version of the character.
Well, it would have been more like a sacrifice, like I'll stay behind the island because I have to turn the switch to get you guys off it.
But even if he still has like a gory death that's the result of his own hubris, I think the fact that you've made him more relatable is probably more true to
makes it
life.
scarier as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I've always thought it was interesting how many characters actually make it out of Jurassic Park alive, because there's actually a very low body count, as we'll find out in the next film.
Yeah, it is interesting that I was talking to you this week that I think if someone were to read Jurassic Park, the book, and today, and decide to, the series didn't exist, and decided to adapt it, I think they would have leant more into how evil Hammond is, because you would read it and you would go, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos sort of character, that it's like this ruthless billionaire who, and they'd probably take away any humanity, because you don't want to. I mean, it would depend on who's adapting it, but you wouldn't want to sympathize with these kind of characters.
Would it be fellow billionaire Steven Spielberg directing?
Yeah.
I think that's still valid, though. That's still a valid interpretation of the character, and I think that like,
oh, absolutely. I think we got a more interesting one because So yeah, the Lost World Jurassic Park came out 4 years later and is adapted from the sequel to Jurassic Park, which was again written by Michael Crichton, and Spielberg asked Michael Crichton to write a second novel so that he could adapt a second film.
So strange. It's such a strange workaround.
And the interesting thing is that Ian Malcolm dies in the first book as well.
How does he die in the first book?
I remember he's looking up at a skylight and dies. And it's like succumbing to wounds later on. I think it might just be he's wounded in the same way, but then just dies
Malcolm
because
is
of it.
said to have died of his injuries. It says.
So it's like the same injuries he gets in the movies, I guess.
The only result on when you Google how does Ian Malcolm die in the book, it's one result, and it's from Ultimate Pop Culture Wiki. Oh no, sorry. For some reason, maybe it's just the
Google's being
layout
weird
of
at the moment. It
page.
was.
Oh, view all. Sorry, no, that's images. There are multiple pages. Okay, I went back and now it's
right.
Okay, never mind. Very confused.
So
by that.
yeah, it's this interesting thing where he dies in the book, and then Spielberg was like, everyone loved Ian Malcolm, or Jeff Goldblum's Ian Malcolm specifically. Can you write a sequel where he comes back? But the other thing that was really written into a corner, because the Ian Malcolm thing's like, it's somewhat known. But the other thing that like no one really talks about is the whole reason we have a Site B, which is what the almost the rest, well, a lot of the rest of the franchise like hinges on the fact that there was these two islands, is that they fucking napalm the Isla Nublar in the book of the first one. So they couldn't go back and be like, oh yeah, not all of their animals were killed with the napalm, so they just said, yeah, there's a second island in the book. But then when making the movie, they still kept the second island thing. So, because watching the movie, I was always so confused as to why we needed two islands in the films. And it's like, I guess it makes it, they bred them on Isla Sorna. I say Isla, but in the movies they say
I feel like
Isla.
they say Isla, which is less correct, but
but yeah, in Isla Sorna, they bred them there and then would move them to Isla Nublar, which would be where the park at the attraction is. But yeah, there's essentially, I think the book ends with, there's like a scene where they go into the raptor caves because they need to count the eggs to see if any had gotten off the island. And so there's a really tense thing where they go in and it's like this, we've got this far, we have to do this to see if, so they, just get out, and I think they realize that the raptors probably did get off the island, and then they get helicoptered out as they drop napalm on the island.
It's interesting that the book almost sounds like it's a far less sympathetic narrative to the movie, because the movies, especially for better or worse going forward, have this idea that the dinosaurs, now that they're here, we can't just kill them off.
Which especially like to a stupid extent.
Yeah. So that's I think I agree that it's strange that they have a second island for no narrative reason in the second film, but I'm glad they didn't napalm Isla Nublar.
So The Lost World, Jurassic Park. What's it about? Again, directed by Steven Spielberg. 53%
on Rotten Tomatoes.
That is correct.
Is that correct? So, quite the Hammondian fall from grace. This one is, as we say, it's about, there's a second island, Isla Sorna, where the dinosaurs were bred, and Ian Malcolm, who is back. They demanded this character.
Jeff Goldblum's back.
be retconned so that he could come back. And so he's back, but he's and it's such a specific character in the first film. In fact, he's actually, I'd say he's more like Jeff Goldblum is in real life in the first film. And you say, like, well, Jeff Goldblum's back. It's like, maybe Ian Malcolm's back. Maybe Jeff Goldblum's the one.
Jeff Goldblum left, yeah. I mean, it is like, you could argue that there's like a PTSD element, but it's like, go into that more,
Yeah, exactly. He agrees basically to go to the second island because his girlfriend is there and she is taking photos of the dinosaurs, and there's sort of this preservation idea that John Hammond is, sort of getting behind. Again, presented as a much more sympathetic character than he probably deserves in this film. But while they're there, the InGen, who's the company behind Jurassic Park, turn up in sort of this militarized fashion. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to get the dinosaurs to take them to a San Diego Jurassic Park.
Yeah, where they want a T-Rex to be.
The idea being that, like, why pay thousands of dollars to fly to Costa Rica when you can
pay thousands of dollars to fly to San Diego?
See it in your backyard. And so, yeah, that's the setup. There's a lot of really good scenes, a lot of really exciting scenes. So Jeff Goldblum's, Ian Malcolm's there, Sarah Harding, who's played by Julianne Moore, is there. Vince Vaughn's there as a character named Nick. There's a guy named Eddie. Ian Malcolm's daughter is there. She sneaks upon the boat and manages to get there. Pete Postlethwaite plays a big game hunter whose only fee for sort of guiding the InGen soldiers is that he wants to hunt a T-Rex buck.
Roland Tembo. It's
And
like
it all
it's
sort
one of those like it's such a specific character name for like a name you don't even really hear in the film.
Yeah. And then all of this culminates in the InGen guys bringing a T-Rex back to San Diego, where it briefly escapes before being captured by the good guys who use its child as bait, and it's sent back to Isla Sorna. Hey, look. Lot of good stuff in this movie. Lot of good stuff in this movie. Enough to feel very complex about it, I think. My main memory of this was when I lived in Wellington when I was 4 years old. It was very windy. I was 4 years old. I lived in Wellington for a year. Our house had a rumpus room, something I've never had since. Like just a room downstairs that you could go and play in.
Yeah, but it would only be there sometimes. Like the Simpsons one.
Yeah. And we had a bunch of posters. I remember we had like a Batman and Robin poster up
Very cool.
And we had a Lost World Jurassic Park poster. Do you know what the poster is for this movie?
Yeah, it's very similar to the first one, but it's got like greenery and shit on it.
So it does have greenery, but up the top, there's a gap in the greenery and there's a T-Rex eye staring down at you, the viewer. And my parents had to put tape over the eye because I was too scared to go into the rumpus room. the eye was staring down at me. And since, I talked before about how like I sort of got gradually more into Jurassic Park a little bit later. And I always felt that I always struggled with this one. And I feel like maybe I don't struggle for the same reason with it. I mean, there's a real stupid scene which we could maybe talk about, but like for what a lot of people I think probably consider to be the best part of the movie, I think the image of a T-Rex wandering around San Diego, I always thought that was real stupid. Like I don't.
I think that's generally considered to be the worst part of the movie.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. I could so see someone being like, well, it's the new thing that the movie brings to the series. I always thought that just looked real stupid, and I think I'm
the opposite. I think it's a cool image to see a T-Rex in the middle of San Diego. I think the whole bit is stupid. But if you just showed me a picture of a T-Rex in the middle of San Diego, I'd be like, it's a cool picture. It's a cool image.
I guess I understand the need to want to take the series in new directions, something that none of the sequels do beyond this. But like, I guess like
so far.
the degree. Yeah, the degree to which my imagination runs wild seeing a T-Rex in suburbia, I don't like it. It's better being. Yeah. It's better that we've gone to them. I think. Yeah,
it is. It's more compelling. That scene was originally devised for a third film, but Spielberg thought, I'm probably not going to do a third film. Let's just put it in this one.
And it does feel like that. It feels like it's this weird.
It's a tacked on, like, because the thing is, and this is probably something I knew beforehand, I think from my Seen It board game, which had a DVD accompanying it, that I knew that in The Lost World, Jurassic Park, there's a dinosaur in San Diego. And I assumed that's the whole film. And so I was quite shocked to get almost 2 hours into a 2 hour and 10-minute film. And the dinosaur hasn't gone to San Diego yet.
Yeah. I think the best thing I can say about this film is I do think it's a good idea to have Ian Malcolm be the main character. I think that's really cool. Whether or not the characterization was consistent. But the scene where they are hanging off the cliff in the truck thing.
It's as good as anything in the first one.
It's probably my favorite scene, I think, in the series.
Insane.
Like,
that's insane.
You're like, yeah, it's probably as good as anything in the first one, and then I like,
I
agree.
And I go, no.
I would also,
I can take you this far, but I can go with you no further.
I think it's so exciting when Julianne Moore falls down on the glass pane directly,
and you're like, they're finally getting rid of this character.
No, I think it's so exciting.
Sucks, to be honest.
Well, let me talk about the one good thing in the movie before we talk about the bad stuff, please.
Cool.
So, I think that it's just it's really exciting, and it's like the bit where they're hanging off when they're holding on to the rope that Eddie's fed down to them, and the whole thing falls off. Like, it's just such a great enduring image. And one of the things I like about it the most is that it's not about dinosaurs. It's a separate plight. it's caused by dinosaurs being around, but it's not them trying to
Right.
outrun a dinosaur. And I think that's a real fun thing to put in your dinosaur movie. It's like how the best zombie movies, the zombies aren't the main threat. It's it's human characters
us.
that present more of a threat. And so I just really love that scene. I think that's so exciting.
I think something that I've got this from you, and it's something that I repeat quite a lot. But so there's and I think it's like this is the perfect movie.
Is it Superflu? Is that what you got from me?
No, it's not real.
Neither's dinosaurs. Dinosaurs aren't
anyway,
real.
The thing is, and you'll be able to tell me who this is, but there's this idea of that a good film is a film with 3 good scenes and no bad ones.
Mm-hmm.
Who said that? Who was it that said that?
Howard Hawks.
Howard Hughes. So he said, there's this idea that, and because the interesting thing, the thing about, and you made a video about this, and I think about it all the time, that The Lost World, it's like the perfect movie for this, is that it is a film that has 3 good scenes, but it also just has quite a few bad ones. And that's, and so The Lost World is not a good movie because of that. And so the 3 good scenes, no bad one thing is actually it actually is a great metric for what makes a good movie, I think.
Yeah.
Because one of the other ones similar to that is like the raptors in the tall grass. They're running through the tall grass.
Such a great
and they're
scene.
Getting picked off one by one. Again, as good as anything in the first film. Yeah, as good as any sequence in the first film. Might be my favorite sequence in the whole franchise.
That's insane.
But then I can't think of a third one. But there's
well,
probably
I would say the fact that it's about an industrial army complex coming to. I think that's a brilliant place to take the story.
Sure, yeah.
So maybe not a scene, but an idea. I think is really good.
But then you have a few bad scenes. There's the T-Rex in San Diego, and there is the gymnastic velociraptor death. What's that?
So the Jeff Goldblum's character's daughter, we find out at what is a very crafty Chekhov's gun setup at the beginning of the film that she was cut from the gymnastics team. And then later on in the film, they're running away from these velociraptors, and one of them has, they're in like this little shack, and one of them has Ian Malcolm cornered, and then his daughter goes, I know what to do. And she jumps into a pole in the middle of the roof and starts doing like flips, and she goes, "Hey!" And the velociraptor, speaking English, turns to look because it knows it's being talked to, and sees her doing these somersaults, and then she jumps and kicks it out the window where it is impaled on some spikes on the ground, being the only time, I haven't seen Jurassic World Dominion yet, but the only time in the series up until now, or maybe up until Jurassic World somewhere, that a dinosaur is actually killed by a human in the film, something which is like quite antithetical to, I think, the idea of Jurassic Park, that the dinosaurs shouldn't be killing the humans shouldn't be killing the dinosaurs.
There is because in the movie there's is it in the second one, or maybe it's in the third one? They're like, they're in the helicopter and they like just shoot one of the two. Or is that in Jurassic World? I fucked myself over by also watching Jurassic World in the last week. So I'm one ahead. But no, there is a few human killing.
That's the first one then, because no one kills a dinosaur in Jurassic Park. And it's just such a bad scene. And then Ian Malcolm goes, "They cut you from the team," and it's so like, I didn't need this resolve. I didn't need this character to
I
wasn't
hankering for her to get a gymnastics resolution.
So that's a pretty dumb scene. I think there are not necessarily dumb scenes, but there's some stuff that really just takes ages to get to as well. And there's also some stuff that is missing from the film, much in the way that I think maybe John Hammond should have still died in Jurassic Park 1. Yeah. Pete Postlethwaite's character, Roland, whatever his surname is such a like, and you've got Pete Postlethwaite, you've got him in your movie, and he's such a good villain. And then the end of his storyline is he captures the T-Rex, and then he just suddenly is like, we shouldn't be playing God, so yeah, I'm going. Like, he just has a change
I'm
of heart.
out of here.
He should have died a horrible death. There's this great moment where after they've hung off the cliff and their compadre Eddie has been eaten by the two T-Rexes, they've like joined forces with the military now, begrudgingly. And one of them is that someone makes a comment about how the T-Rexes won't be looking for us now, they've just fed. And Ian Malcolm's like, I assume you're talking about Eddie, our friend who just saved our life by giving his. And they're like, oh, boo-hoo. And as they're walking away, he says something like it's just the fact of the matter is predators don't hunt when they're not hungry. And then Jeff Goldblum goes, yeah, only humans do. And Pete Postlethwaite goes, oh, cry me a river, Dr. Malcolm. And it's so it's so cutthroat and so brutal and cruel. And it's like, that's the kind of character that gets eaten alive by compies by the end.
The dude who gets eaten alive by compies, that's a great satisfying death, because it's one of the like mercenaries. Can't remember his name, but he's like antagonizes the compies a bunch. Like he's talking to he makes fun of them, and he like zaps one of them for no reason, and then they all fucking gang up on him, and it's a very satisfying death. And again,
actually, what's the third good scene in this movie?
That one.
Well, it could be that one, actually. Or it's the opening scene with the little girl getting attacked by compies on the island.
That is great, yeah.
Really like that. So I thought it was creepy. I think Mommy, Daddy, I found something is like kind of Toes being into like a very iconic line. Yeah, Mommy, Daddy, I found something.
It's funny because I think I saw that scene like when I was a kid, and maybe that's why I thought the film was too scary.
I saw it as a kid as well and thought it was too scary, yeah.
And so I watching Jurassic Park the first time, I was like, that scene wasn't in it. Weird. And then found out it was actually from the sequel.
You're like, what would that have been from? It must have been from We're Back. That cartoon
dinosaur story, yeah. So interestingly as well, so the first film was shot in Hawaii, and then they scouted a bunch of different places for the second one because it was a different island. They wanted it to look different, and so they tried Hawaii and Puerto Rico and a few different other places. Costa Rica and South America, where the film is set, as it was never actually considered as a filming location, but it was because it would have been the rainy season. But ultimately, they decided Fiordland, New Zealand, to film.
Is Lost World filmed in New Zealand?
And yeah, then they just started production in California instead.
That'd be such a cool place to film.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they chose New Zealand over some of the other places because it was believed to better represent a real dinosaur environment to shoot it up north in New Zealand.
Very cool.
But it was filming would have been too costly in New Zealand, apparently.
Right.
And
the gone of those days.
Yeah. Also, fun fact: the spikes on the end of a Stegosaurus tail is called a thagomizer. And
hey.
And do you know where that term comes from?
No.
Gary Larson coined it in a Far Side cartoon in 1982, and that's just what they're called now.
I hope Gary Larson's intentions were pure in calling it that.
I want to make it clear. I said thagomizer. THAGOMIZER.
I did not hear that at all. My God.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Wow.
It sounds enough like a slur that I was just I wasn't sure you'd actually misheard me. But yeah. Yeah, they use it to thagomize, I guess. But so I've got some dumb IMDb trivia for you. At around 1 hour 25 minutes, the snake that crawls into Dr. Robert Burke's shirt is a milk snake, which are completely harmless to humans. They are often confused with the highly venomous coral snake due to their nearly identical colour patterns, or he suffers from ophidiophobia, fear of snakes. And this is like a guy where they're hiding, and one of the guys, the snake crawls into his jacket, and he freaks out and gets eaten. And yeah, it's
by
just
a T-Rex, not by the snake.
Yeah. But yeah, it's funny. It's like, it's probably because he thought it was the venomous snake. It's like, yeah, he just got freaked out because it's a snake.
It's kind of a weak moment in the film anyway. I reckon, like, if I was him. Because I did relate, because he kind of looks like me. So I was, like, kind of
He's who
relating to
you
that
play in
character.
the production.
Yeah, and I was like, I reckon if that happened to me, I would freak out quietly. I wouldn't, like, scream and run out of the waterfall I'm hiding in.
Yeah.
But it makes a pretty cool effect, doesn't it, with the blood coming down the waterfall?
Oh, absolutely. One of the movie-built props of the trailers was up for auction in Los Angeles on eBay. Unfortunately, the trailers were in very poor condition. However, photos taken for the sale provided far more information about the trailers.
Go check them.
It's just such a weird, what am I supposed to glean from this? Anything else about the Lost World, Jurassic Park?
I don't know. I feel like you were messaging me during watching and being like, this film fucking sucks, dude. Do you not think, like, especially with where the series goes, can you not feel the Spielbergian quality of it still there?
No.
Really? I've always felt like that's what stands it apart from the other sequels, is that you could still tell it's a Spielberg film.
No, disagree.
I had no idea this was a Spielberg film.
I actually think that it was a reverse Poltergeist situation where he didn't direct it.
Okay. I mean, I don't think he liked directing it. I think he's gone on to be quite candid about how he thinks it's an inferior sequel.
Yeah, he became disenfranchised. He became disenfranchised with the first one, apparently, as well, because he would be long days shooting Schindler's List and then answering the most, fucking mundane, boring questions about tiny CGI details on Jurassic Park at the end of the day in post-production. And so I think he became quite disenfranchised with that as well. But yeah, now Spielberg did not return for Jurassic Park 3 in 2001. This was directed by Joe Johnston, who asked if he could direct the second one, and then Spielberg said, "No, I'm going to do it, but you can do the next one." And Joe Johnston, who we've seen before on the podcast, what else has he directed, AJ? Can you tell me?
He directed Captain America: The First Avenger.
He sure did. Do you know what else he's directed, just out of interest?
The Rocketeer.
He made The Rocketeer, yeah. And he did one other movie we've covered as well, actually.
No, I can't remember what it is.
And it's also one of the other reasons he couldn't do The Lost World, because he was too busy doing Jumanji.
Ah, that's right. Yeah. Nice.
I believe he's also doing... Did he take over Justin Lin? Or who? No, that was Louis Leterrier who did...
That was not Joe Johnston, no.
Joe
Johnston is not directing Fast 10.
The reason I got it confused is because it's like, which forgettable Phase 1 director was it? And it was Louis Leterrier who did The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
That's very funny. Yeah, so... what do you think it says on Rotten Tomatoes?
29%?
48%. Which,
okay.
up until a few months ago, was the lowest one in the franchise.
When Jurassic World Dominion came out, the AV Club, I think, or someone posted an article where there was like, let's look back at Jurassic Park 3, like a classic of the franchise. And I retweeted it and was like, Dominion was that bad, huh? Because I'll tell you what, I think this might be the most I've enjoyed this film in watching it in a long time. But up until rewatching it, I had nothing but terrible memories of this movie. I thought it was so bad. I didn't always think it was bad. What's it about? Dr. Alan Grant is basically like hoodwinked. He's back, by the way, Dr. Alan Grant. He's basically hoodwinked by
the man with the hat.
A Catholic, and this time he's bought his protege.
They actually make a point out of his hat as well.
There you go. He's hoodwinked by a couple of
hoodwinkers.
There's nothing really. They're not even like
carpet salesman.
Yeah.
No, what is he? Always like a
tile and bathroom.
Yeah.
Played by William H. Macy and
Tia Leone.
Tia Leone, and they basically trick him to be their guide for like their wedding anniversary flyover Isla Sorna. But then it turns out that they've actually got him there because their 12-year-old son, went missing in a parasailing accident. And is lost on Isla Sorna somewhere. And so now they're all stuck on the island. There's a new dinosaur in the mix that they didn't know about called the Spinosaur. Or Spinosaurus? Spinosaurus. And so they've all got to navigate this. There's a really cool scene with some pterodactyls, a heretofore before sort of underrepresented dinosaur.
Yeah, because they were kept inside an aviary. Which is a scene in the book. That's one of the sort of big set pieces from the book that was used here.
Yep. And a bunch of people die.
How do they get off the island?
First of all, they have to communicate with some raptors whose eggs they unknowingly stole. And they get away with that because a big part of this movie is a 3D printer, which prints a raptor resonation chamber that shows how they could talk to each other. So they get away with it. And then they get off the island because the army shows up because they ring Laura Dern at one point.
Who returns in this film as well, although not romantically involved with Alan Grant anymore. She's got
seemingly no bad blood either. They're hanging out. They're happy to see each other.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's explicit in the movie, but I was reading that the reason they're not together is that Alan didn't want kids, and that. That's
disappointing after the events of the first film.
Well, no, I think that's good characterization. That after the events of the first one, that because it's such a thing in pop culture to be like, oh, doesn't want to be a father, and then he spends time with kids, and now but it's like no, he never respected kids at all. He didn't like them, and now he can tolerate them. He still doesn't want to be a father, and that's fine. And I think that's a good characterization. And like Kevin Smith said on some podcast or something about there's a whole movie missing about why Allie and Dr. Grant aren't together, and
there's no dinosaurs in that movie, so I don't know if it'll ever get made. But
you wouldn't make it. It would be just like romantic park.
It is strange to do a movie where you split up the love interest from the first film and then not have the sort of emotional story be about them learning to love again. Like, isn't that... Yeah. I feel like the only time I've ever seen characters break up between movies, they get back together by the end of the next one.
It is funny though, because you have the film is still about an estranged love learning to get back together, because Tia Leone and William H. Macy's characters are divorced, but then seemingly back together again by the
presumably moments before they're thrown in prison for several
war crimes.
Yeah. I think that there is not as much to hate about this movie as maybe I initially felt.
No, this movie's great.
It's not great. I
actually think this might be the best one.
Okay.
That's insane. That's what you're supposed to say.
I know what you wanted me to say, Richard. I'm not your fucking puppet. There's some interesting stuff in this. I think all the stuff which I presume is clipped from the original novel comes across quite well.
The riverboat scene is another one.
Nice. And the aviary stuff is great, and I want to talk about that more in a second. But the thing that's become a symbol of this movie is that there's a part of where they're flying to the island where Alan has a little nap, and he wakes up and there's no one on the plane. And then he looks over and he hears someone go, Alan, and he looks over and there's a velociraptor on the plane, Richard. And it looks at him and he goes, Alan. And I was like, when I saw this in the cinema when I was 7 years old, I got such a fucking jump scare seeing the raptor on the plane. I thought it was so scary. And I think that is such a perfect little morsel of the kind of thing that fucking ruins a movie. Like this like veritable turd in the salad, you know? Like it's like no matter how much you want to take the movie seriously after this, they made a scene where a velociraptor speaks. However, one thing I've never noticed until this movie is that scene is actually a callback. It doesn't need to be, but earlier in the film, when Alan is at Allie's house, he's talking to a parrot, and he says, "Can you say my name? Can you say Alan? Can you say my name, Alan?" And he's talking to a parrot, and a massive sort of ongoing thing in the first film especially is Dr. Alan Grant is considered this wacko because he believes that dinosaurs evolved into birds. And so he's literally talking to a bird saying, "Can you say Alan?" And then
I like that you put on an American accent for a character who has hints of a New Zealand accent.
Well, I wouldn't. That's exact. I could probably do an excellent Alan Grant impression then if he's
And
got
it's funny. What's funny as well is that specifically that scene where he's talking to the parrot. When I was like, oh, he's actually just doing a New Zealand accent.
Do your best Dr. Alan Grant impression.
Oh, can you bloody talk to me?
Oh, bloody dinosaurs again! Fucking hell!
Yeah. One thing that I do like about this movie, which I fucking hate about Fallen Kingdom, is that Alan Grant doesn't go to the island voluntarily. That he shouldn't go to the island voluntarily.
I mean, that will become the defining issue of the Jurassic sequels, I think, is like, why in God's name would you bring back characters for a sequel? We should talk. We should save this to talk about for Jurassic World.
Well, I'm interested because I think Dominion probably solves the problem a little bit, but it is funny as well because you think, like Alan Grant says at the start of the film, like there is nothing on God's green earth that would get me back on that island, and then they go, hey, we'll give you a lot of money. And then he's like, sweet. And it's this funny thing because you're like, oh, God, that's such a betrayal of his character. The first thing we learn about Alan Grant, pretty much, is that he'll do anything for money. Like, in the first film, he's like, nah, we're not interested, sorry, we're very busy. And then they're like, I'll pay a lot of fucking money. And he's like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. Yeah, I think that's the... I actually don't mind the story necessarily of the film, or like the setup at least.
I think the worst thing about it is probably Tia Leone and William H. Macy's characters are just like the worst characters in the franchise, I reckon. They're so annoying.
Yeah, William H. Macy was asked why he did the film, and he said, I'm 50 years old and I get to fight a dinosaur.
Yeah, right. I really like the scene before he goes to the island where he's doing a lecture, and he's like, it's kind of double edged because like it's kind of lame that he's still obsessed with raptors and there's still something to be learnt about raptors. Like, didn't we get?
I like, because there's reference in when he meets the kid and they say, and he's like, I've read both of your books, and he says, yeah, and he's like, yeah, I preferred the first one because you actually liked dinosaurs.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah,
it's such a, because he wrote the second one after the Jurassic Park incident.
Yeah, and so I like that scene where he's basically saying he believes that raptors could communicate, and then he's like, does anyone have any questions? And everyone puts their hand up, and he's like, any questions that aren't about Jurassic Park? And a bunch of people put their heads out, and then he goes, any questions about the events in San Diego, which I did not witness, which is such a... I want to make a supercut of single lines of dialogue from sequels which acknowledge the previous movie and sort of throwaway kind of context. And basically his character arc is like, people think he's a nut that velociraptors could talk, and they're like, why don't you just go to Isla Nublar and see if they talk to each other? And he's like, because they're not real dinosaurs. But then the resolve is that he just sees them talking on Isla Sorna, so it's the same thing.
I do love that. It's any questions? Keeping in mind that I've already explained my hair. The Simpsons joke.
So I really like that. And then later on in the film, when he meets the kid that they've been looking for, he's like, did you read Malcolm's book? And I didn't remember that line in this movie. And I think it's cool to acknowledge. I don't know, it's just those little inter-movie connections that used to be subtle in Hollywood, and now they're like full post-credit scenes.
Yeah. The other thing that there's been a lot of discourse recently around like director's cuts or like original cuts of films, and there was one recently, and our friend Andrew Todd wrote a big article about the reason that, like, because directors love to say, yeah, my first cut of this film was 9 hours long, and they're like, oh my god, release that cut. And it's like, it's weird. It'll be a cut where scenes play out like 3 times, or shots will hold so much longer than they need to, and when you trim all that fat, you're left with a 2-hour movie. And like Taika Waititi has been talking about his first cut of Thor 4 was 4 hours long, and he said, no, I'm not going to release it because it was shit. Like, and he said, yeah, the scenes I cut were bad, that's why they were cut. The longest rough cut of this film was 96 minutes long. The final cut, including credits, is 92 minutes long. Now, how incredible is that? By the time the credits start, it's been like 86 minutes. It's fucking phenomenal, and like we need more blockbusters that aren't afraid to not even be an hour and a half long. It's so good. It's what a good runtime this film has.
Other good stuff about this movie, I think.
The runtime.
The runtime is excellent. No, the amount of time characters are seen on screen running, the runtime.
Yeah.
The satellite phone jingle being a sign that the monster that ate the satellite, the guy with the satellite phone, is around, is great.
Yeah. The shot where they get to the fence and then they hear the phone, they're like, huh, and they turn around, the Spinosaurus is just waiting for them. That's a great shot.
That's scary. That's such a scary shot, I think.
Yeah.
And I also the aviary scene where they basically have to walk through a giant bird cage and there's pterodactyls that attack them
instead of birds.
That got me thinking about it, and because that's like clearly the best scene in the movie, and it's from the novel. Yeah. I would have if I was making this film, I would have taken the idea of adapting the stuff we haven't seen before, and I would have probably I would have made it way more pterodactyl focused, I think. Because there's raptors, Spinosaurus, and pterodactyls. And I reckon
each of them get 20 minutes, film's done.
I reckon you could have probably made the whole egg storyline, maybe even the talking storyline, the fact that they communicate with each other, that could have been about pterodactyls.
The talking storyline. Just action, baby!
I just think, because if you look at the three films, I guess it still is this way, so I'm essentially fixing something that's already there. But I always thought it was the first one, the raptors are the villains. The second one, the T-Rexes are the villains, and the third one, it's the new dinosaur. Yeah, exactly. It should be the pterodactyls are the villains. As scary as that shot of the Spinosaurus is, I don't think it's that good of an inclusion in this movie, especially because they had to radically change what a Spinosaurus actually looked like to get it to that thing looked more like a crocodile apparently in real life.
Well, yeah, there was this weird thing about they weren't actually in real life. They weren't actually sure if the Spinosaurus was a land or a sea dinosaur, and so I think they made it amphibious. But yeah, the Spinosaurus is only on screen for 3 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that this movie's faults could be solved by more pterodactyls or anything like that?
Well, I think you'd risk adding to the runtime.
No, I'm talking about swapping out the raptors for pterodactyls.
Are you sure? I mean, I do love that there's it's a pterodactyl scene, you know?
I guess so, yeah.
It's interesting as well. So the plot for this film, Spielberg's original idea for a plot for this film was about Alan Grant being discovered to be living on one of the two islands. He'd snuck in after not being allowed in to research the dinosaurs and was living in a tree like Robinson Crusoe. But I couldn't imagine this guy wanting to get back on any island that had dinosaurs in it after the first movie. Funnily enough, after a decade of my life not mentioning Robinson Crusoe, I've now done so twice in 24 hours because I mentioned him on one of the Patreon podcasts we did yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, that is the ultimate Jurassic sequel problem, is that you just wouldn't. What would compel you to return? And I think, short of Dr. Grant going crazy, maybe that would be a good enough reason. But I kind of don't want that ending for him.
Well, the other idea for a script, it was a written script, was about teens on getting marooned on Isla Sorna. Apparently, it wasn't a bad script, but it read like a bad episode of Friends.
Sounds like a bad script then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Sam Neill has come to this film's defense. He says it got unfair treatment from critics and said he thinks it's a pretty damn good film. I wonder if he still says that, but I agree. I mean, it's not as bad as everyone makes it out to be.
It's not as bad as I remembered it being, and I'm very conscious of how weirdly positive I've been about it. I had a good time watching it. I was in the mood.
No, it's a good time, and it's one of those things where if Jurassic Park wasn't one of the greatest films ever made, this would be a perfectly serviceable sequel for it.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. And it's 92 minutes long. Oh, so good.
I'll say it. It annoys me that it's that much shorter than the other two.
It should be shorter.
Films in a series should be as roughly as long as each other.
The rest of them are roughly the same length.
Well, there you go.
So, I don't know if you noticed this, but at around 1 hour and 13 minutes, according to IMDb, it says, probably as a joke, Barney and Friends is shown on television and then cutting away to the Spinosaurus growling.
What does it mean, probably as a joke?
It
is
a
joke.
Dinosaur show. Yeah, exactly.
It is a joke. What the hell?
This
is when Alan Grant calls Ellie and her son picks up the phone.
Stupid fucking son.
Gets distracted by Barney and so doesn't give her the phone in time. And that's such a funny scene to me because it's like this little kid.
It's probably a joke, yeah.
It's probably a joke. But it's so funny that like these people are gonna die because this dumb little shit like got because like that's the butterfly effecty and chaos that a toddler can cause. You know, because he just got distracted by Barney. A bunch of people are going to get eaten by a dinosaur.
And also, Tia Leone and Alessandra Nivola, who plays Billy, have both been in films with Nicolas Cage. Ben is spelled Benn.
I get it.
0 of 11 people have found this interesting.
Characters in his character in National Treasure's name.
Yes, called Ben. Also, I'm gonna add to this that I got sent earlier in the record. Tyler's dumb trivia. It says the parasailing scene in 3 and the way Eric says, "See anything yet?" and the way the other man responds with "no" is really off, and you hear it again later when they play back the footage on the camcorder.
Very nice. Tyler's not a cult elder. He can't get his own stuff read out like that.
He's got his own segment now, Tyler's Dumb Trivia. Yeah, speaking of cult elders, should we see what they have to say this week?
Yeah, sure. So, if you want your voice to be heard on the podcast, or at least read out,
words to be heard.
Yeah. Then head on over to Patreon where you can join the Meeting of the Elders, or Cult Elders tier, where you can be a part of the Meeting of the Elders, which is a little secret channel we have on Discord where you can join and tell us what you thought of the franchise of the week. And what have we got this week, Richard?
This week we've got a few people have chimed in saying fuck J.K. Rowling, which is a fun reference to last week. Vinny Redux added fuck Cameron Thor, who played Dodgson in the first film and is in prison. For,
a fun little connective tissue there as well, as this is actually our second franchise in a row, which could be titled Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Yeah. Brent Mione. Oh, I guess that's a Hermione. Brent Miney.
No one's changed their Discord usernames from the Harry Potter weeks. Change them to Jurassic Park.
So Brent has said, does Jurassic Park follow the Jaws quality drop? I guess that goes to show how often imitated, never duplicated Steven Spielberg is. I think inarguably it doesn't follow the quality drop. I think maybe it followed, like, the quality drop of Jaws to Jaws 2 is like similar to Jurassic Park to Jurassic Park 2 and the rest of Jurassic Park, but I don't think Jurassic Park ever gets as bad as like Jaws 3 and 4.
Yeah, probably not.
But I think, yeah, it is an interesting point that, especially with some of the like 3 and Fallen Kingdom, you do have that like trying to recapture the magic of Spielberg that you just can't, and trying to get those. And I mean, even Spielberg doing it to himself in The Lost World, that like that perfect marriage of like family film but still scary. Bless My Dog has replied to that and just said, I don't think it ever dips that low. Sort of schlocky summer blockbuster crap that has very little to say outside of some slightly better than usual action scenes. Dumb fun and maybe a little worse. Jaws sequels are just bad in general. Yeah, interesting stuff. And then Bless My Dog said, throwing in some thoughts for the first film. Never seen any of the original trilogy outside of it. I always thought it was schlocky fun, a little cornball, but definitely the quintessential 90s movie ever. The cast, a little Pulp Fiction here, a little of that Heathen Newman here. It adds up to something special. Yeah, interesting to note, we didn't even mention Samuel L. Jackson's in the first film. In fact, I forget every time until I watch it.
One of the 3 characters who dies. according to Ian Malcolm.
Yeah,
In the second
one
film.
of 5 characters that actually dies.
Who are the other 2 that die? Nedry.
Nedry and one worker in the opening scene.
Ah, right, yeah.
The effects are more dated than people give it credit for, and the overall story is more fun than substantial. But we have dinosaurs, and that's
I disagree
what we get.
with that. I think the story of the first one is incredibly substantial. I think that's why it's stuck with people.
Yeah. But we have dinosaurs, and that's what we get. The whole welcome to Jurassic Park is one of the most iconic scenes in film history. Absolutely brilliant and iconic. Yeah, that's true. It's interesting, like, talking about the story being substantial. Jurassic Park is always the example I give when people are like, just turn your brain off, film. Just don't worry about it.
Oh, yeah.
Then it's like, no, like, Jurassic Park is a big, dumb blockbuster, but it's also one of the greatest films ever made.
Yeah.
And it's okay to... And Spielberg, produced Transformers, which is, like, the classic example. But it's like, yeah, no, it's okay to want more from these films.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating that Spielberg was able to pump both this and Schindler's List out in the same year, which goes to show how much of a powerhouse he was at the time. I mean, yeah, people didn't think so. I think after 1993, there may have been a downturn in Spielberg's career and popularity that he never quite got out of, especially where he was before. I'd say that 1993 was his peak. I mean, yeah, that was probably the best year he ever had, but didn't look like it was coming. My neighbor Craig says, I saw all 3 of these in cinemas. The first one blew my 8-year-old mind, obviously. I have a distinct memory of sitting in the cinema watching The Lost World and thinking halfway through the film, man, it'd be cool if they did a Jurassic Park movie where a dinosaur got loose in the big city, which then happened. I don't remember anything from Jurassic Park 3, but recall that it was playing on Japanese TV the night I was staying in a Tokyo capsule hotel, so I had a fun time lying in a coffin-sized room watching Sam Neill yelling in Japanese on a small wall-mounted screen. That's great.
It sounds terrifying. A coffin-sized room.
Dan in Denver has said, it's really incredible how solid Jurassic Park is. Any sequel was doomed to fuck up. As a result, it's been fascinating just how many misses there have been. The edit with Jeff Goldblum yawning in the subway is one of the best cuts ever. That's referring to the...
Yeah, so at the start of The Lost World, when the little girl finds the compies and she gets attacked by them, the last shot we see of this intro is her mother seeing what's happened, and she screams, and then her screams cuts to to an image of Jeff Goldblum, who's standing in front of like a Hawaiian poster. So it looks like he's standing in like a poorly green screened tropical location. And he does a yawn that sort of, looks almost like he's screaming. And I think in a better movie, this would be such an intelligent meta joke. Like, it's basically saying like, yeah, we know you've seen dinosaurs before, but now you're going to see something bigger and better, Like, that's what it feels like the filmmaker's communicating, but because it's an inferior movie, I don't think it hits home. It hits home.
There's a similar cut in what I would call one of the best cuts of all time in House of Gucci, where Jared Leto's fat Italian character comes out and I think he's lost all his money in Gucci or something, and
oh no.
he the whole scene is silent, and then he like silently wails. He opens his mouth to let out a cry, and it plays a car horn instead, and then it transitions to a car scene and the car's honking. It's such a good cut. Look it up. And I mean, I'm saying this ironically, of course, but the now it's time to...
Is that meeting adjourned, is it?
The meeting adjourned. But I do want to talk about titles briefly with you, AJ, because I know you're kind of the title guy.
I mean, I'm sure I'm not going to say anything new from when we talked about it in the original version.
I might
but
say
this
some
is,
new stuff.
This is to redux and to overwrite, not reference the old one.
Yeah. So the second book is just called The Lost World, which... And they thought they were originally going to call the film just The Lost World, and then they decided, people might get it confused with the movie that already exists called The Lost World, which also involves dinosaurs. And so they added the...
Is it not a reference to that movie?
Oh, it is, yeah. But they thought, people, that we shouldn't call it just the same as a movie that already exists. But they... so it ended up being called that, and then the third film, which had different plots at different times and stuff like that. Other titles included, potential titles were Jurassic Park Breakout and The Extinction Jurassic Park 3. Lakes of the Extinction subtitle. Jurassic Park 3.
Interesting.
Or Jurassic Park Extinction.
Neither of which would really apply to the movies that.
I think those
created.
were for earlier drafts.
Listen. Jurassic Park has long been a source of turmoil for me with its titles. I hate that the second one is called something : Jurassic Park. I think that's an insane way to title something.
It's very rare. There's like what the Carrie 2 it's subtitled Carrie 2.
Right.
The
this isn't
Rage
even
Carrie
Jurassic
2,
Park 2. This is like it doesn't even have a number. And then to then call the third one Jurassic Park 3 when there's no Jurassic Park 2 has always been such a thorn in my heel. I've always hated that so much. You can't call something 3 if there's no 2. And I know that we said this on the original Jurassic Park podcast because I think I might have come up with it on air. I can't remember. But like I am kind of fascinated by calling the second one Jurassic Park B, just because like there's like when you're listing,
Park B.
Yeah, exactly. But
Just
when you're listing something in real life, whatever it is, you'll either go 1, 2 or A, B, right? And sequels have never done this when they've chosen letters to do to differentiate sequels over numbers. And I guess it's because B has a certain connotation when it comes to movies, and if you go Jurassic Park B, people are going to think it's a B movie. But like even then, like Jurassic Park Site B would I think be quite that's a very sequel-y title, but in a way I kind of like.
What about Jurassic Park? It's like a sauna in here, but sauna is spelled SORNA.
Yep, great. I don't know. Like I'm well aware of the shortcomings of Jurassic Park Site B as a title. But the other shortcomings that come from calling it the Lost World Jurassic Park piss me off to no end. And I remember we just covered this for the podcast in 2017. And then we sat down to play a round of Buzz the Movie Quiz on PS2. And one of the rounds was like a image from a movie will pop up and what it is will slowly be appearing. You'll have a bunch of options slowly appearing on the side. And it's whoever's the first to click the right button to say what the name of the movie is.
You buzz in and then you have whatever's revealed of the 4 titles to guess from. So it might be one letter, you know?
Yeah. And we played this and I buzzed in first because there was a picture of Ian Malcolm specifically from The Lost World. And I buzzed in first and I buzzed on the title with which a T had appeared. Because I was like, The Lost World, Jurassic Park. And then you ended up stealing it from me because you clicked on the J that appeared and had gone with Jurassic Park, The Lost World. That's not what the movie's called. That's actually not what the movie's called, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think because you buzzed, the answer that was revealed for you was like The Fly or something like that.
Yeah. That's just not what the movie's called. It is, that is, to me, that is inarguably a glitch in Buzz the Movie Quiz.
Well, especially for that game specifically.
And to have a T appear as one of the other options.
Because it's like, it's not even also known as, you know.
Anyway, I think Site B evokes like, oh my god, I know exactly what that means. You know?
I do wish, though, and this is more of a Richard thing than an AJ thing, but I wish that the 5th film had been called The Lost Park Jurassic World.
They switch between world and park. I guess like the only other way to do it with Jurassic World in mind would be to call each film Jurassic something else, you know?
Jurassic Winter, Jurassic Waters,
Jurassic
War.
That's not what I was going for, but like if the first one's Jurassic Park and the second one's Jurassic Island, I don't know.
Cretaceous Park.
Whatever. I'm just saying it's
Triassic Park.
It's a bad setting. And if you called it Jurassic Park Site B, I don't know what you'd call Jurassic Park 3 instead. You certainly wouldn't call it Jurassic Park 3. I wouldn't let you.
So that's our discussion on titles. Join us next week for when we have more or less the same discussion. So we have to rank that franchise.
We haven't done continue the franchise yet.
Yeah, I was going to say that for last.
Okay. Interesting. You want to do the worst ranking first?
Yeah, so if you head along to letterboxd.com/cultpopture/lists/FFF ranking, you can see our ranked list of every franchise we've covered. Interestingly, we've already ranked this one, which we haven't always done. But when we ranked it the first time, we were ranking this trilogy plus Jurassic World, and now we'll presumably be splitting the franchise into two.
Who knows?
And if you don't like it, you can deal with it. So, it's currently at 31. It's below X-Men, above 28 Days Later. Do you think it needs to be higher or lower?
It's above 28 Days Later.
Mm.
I think 28 Days Later is a better franchise than Jurassic Park.
I disagree.
What? Where's Jaws?
Right, well, we'll leave it where it is then, huh? Jaws is quite low. Jaws is at 51.
Okay, I was just thinking it needs to be denoted as being better than Jaws, I think is the main.
Okay, well, we'll leave it where it is then.
Okay.
Alrighty, that's ranked that franchise for this week. Now it's time to continue the franchise. Obviously, there is a pretty well-known continuation of the franchise in the form of Jurassic World, which spawned its own trilogy, and yeah, we'll get to that next week, but dozens of video games and comics and whatnot as well, and a lot of the sort of a lot of continue the franchises, the more kind of predominant ones actually came out after Jurassic World, so it's more it's more accurate to talk about after Jurassic World to talk about them. Then there's theme park rides, there's you name it, Jurassic. It's a huge media franchise. So yeah, what's your continue the franchise for us?
So I came up with this idea that I thought was brilliant, and then did a little digging and saw that it's not as entirely original as I maybe thought. But there was a line I'd never noticed in Jurassic Park, The Lost World Jurassic Park, that caught my attention, which is when they're sailing up to Isla Sorna. And they have like a Spanish guide, and he says that he's not going to take them any closer than he wants to drop them off and then come back later, because he's heard these islands are called Las Cinco Muertes, and Vince Vaughn goes, Las Cinco Muertes, and he goes, sí, which means the 5 deaths, and I was like, isn't that interesting that it's called the Muertes Archipelago, which is the death arc, or whatever archipelago means, which is basically it's and this is canon in Jurassic Park that Nublar and Sorna are part of this archipelago, or the 5 deaths. And I was like, well, what does that look like? And so I came up with the idea of a video game that would explore these. There is a video game called Jurassic World Evolution, but it's like a roller coaster tycoon
it's like
type
a park
thing.
builder sort of
Yeah. So I want to pitch like a first-person shooter. It's called Jurassic Park: The 5 Deaths, right? And you're a photographer. So it's a first-person shooter, but you don't get given a gun. You're given a camera.
Oh, like Pokemon Snap.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Pokemon Snap, but with dinosaurs. You're basically told you have to go across the 5 deaths and, record what lives there. And, of course, there's danger at every turn. The 5 deaths do actually have a name. Interestingly, Island Nublar is not actually one of them. One of the 5 deaths. But the other 5 deaths include Isla Metanceros, Isla Muerta, Isla Pena, Isla Sorna, and Isla Tucano. And according to current law, there aren't dinosaurs on the other ones, but I'm foregoing that. You can find a map of them. There's sort of these 5 islands in like a bow shape, and I think maybe Isla Nublar is actually one of them in that's in some interpretations. So it's all, it feels like it's canon that's all easily editable and up in the air. The main thing I like that Isla Sorna is the biggest one. That's the main thing you need to know. And so I imagine you would go from each island, and maybe like there is a boat out in the middle that acts. So like you start the game, you're on a boat in the middle. You choose which island you want to start on, but you can't go back to your boat until you've completed that island, basically. And each one could have these, distinguishing features, like maybe one of them has like a mountainous range where you can fight a bunch of pterodactyls and things like that, like give them each these like distinguishing characteristics. I thought a fun thing in it could be like a lot of it's obviously deserted. A lot of like there's this presumably could take place. Would have to take place before Fallen Kingdom, I guess, for certain reasons. But like there's like deserted bases like there are in Jurassic Park 3 from InGen, and I thought it could be fun if like one of the collectibles is like audio books, and they're like the books you hear about. So you get Sam Neill and Jeff Goldblum back to it. They've voiced their own audio books, and you can hear clips from them and things like that. And it's basic. I really like the idea of a first person shooter that's not about killing but about surviving and documenting.
Nice, yeah. You reminded me as well, one of the sort of predominant games is one called Trespasser.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even Jurassic Park Trespasser. The game is just called Trespasser, and it was one of the sort of the first games to like, it was like this really advanced game engine for the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a first-person thing as well. You play Minnie Driver voices the character, and Richard Attenborough returns for it as well as John Hammond.
Oh, nice. Well, you get him to, like all the legacy actors return as voice actors for the collectible.
Yeah, nice, yeah.
Yeah.
But the game is considered terrible, but it still has this massive fan base. But the one sort of interesting thing about it is that there's no heads-up display at all. Your health is represented by a tattoo on your breast, which you can look down at.
That's so horny for Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Such an unhorny series.
There was also, I can't remember or couldn't find which game it was exactly, but there's one that once you finish the game, it cuts to like an FMV of Jeff Goldblum as Ian Malcolm.
Yeah, that's right.
So congratulations for finishing the game.
When did we talk about this? Why did we talk about this?
In an interview, so it was when Jurassic World Evolution 2, I think, came out, or maybe might have even been the first one. Jeff Goldblum did the like press tour for it, and there was some great stuff on that press tour. Like all the classic, like Jeff Goldblum answers Google's most searched questions and shit like that. But also a lot of like sit down interviews with people, and someone pulled up this like this tiny like the clip is be a few hundred kilobytes kind of thing. It's like really low quality. And they asked her about, like, you have appeared in a Jurassic Park game before, like, you filmed this little clip. And Jeff Goldblum's like, oh, yeah, no, I remember doing this. And he's like, fun fact, like, we did this while shooting The Lost World that, we got this call, hey, can you do this little thing? And he said, we did it on, like, a lunch break. And Steven Spielberg was actually behind the camera and was giving me notes. So it's like that little clip that's used in the game is actually directed by Steven Spielberg.
Amazing.
Technically. And it's one of these things, and this is one of the things I love about, like, Jeff Goldblum's someone who, if a video pops up that's like interview with Jeff Goldblum or Jeff Goldblum reacts to something, I always will watch it. He's such a fun person to watch, but one of the things I really, really like and respect about him is that he seems to really like movies and like, and because so many actors, especially you see this on like the MCU and stuff like that people, they'll do, the Infinity War cast answers like trivia questions, and they're just like, I have no fucking clue. Like, I don't watch these movies. I don't know what the Infinity Stones are. But Jeff Goldblum, like, really.
He's talking about Christian Bale.
No,
some bloke looking for stones.
Yeah. But that and he remembers like all these like really specific things. You go to any other actor and you go, hey, you filmed this 30-second clip for a video game. Do you remember anything about this? They'd be like, is that me? What the fuck is this? But he's like, he not only remembers filming it, but is able to give like a fun story. And he always like, he'll tell the interviewer that their glasses are like, the ones that someone wore in this film that he like starred opposite them. And like, I just like that he genuinely seems to have that love that we do for film, and has that same kind of like recall that movie fans do, not just the people who star in them.
I'm devastated to report, though, you may not be like this, Richard, because earlier today you said to me, did we do a Patreon episode on Morbius? And it reminded me of how actors forget they're in things.
I remember seeing Morbius, yeah.
What's your continue the franchise?
My continue the franchise, so it's interesting because, and this is one that probably makes more sense for a Jurassic World continue the franchise, but I'm curious to see where the franchise is at the end of Dominion and base my continue the franchise off of that.
Sure.
But because the story that if you handed me the Jurassic Park universe, and the story that I'm most curious to see in this, and this would probably work better as a book even. Is how I want to know the story of the team that went back to Isla Nublar, captured all of the dinosaurs, put them into captivity, and then built a functioning theme park in Jurassic World around that. That's such a, like, because it's this unanswered question from Jurassic World. I mean, again, I haven't seen Dominion, so it might feature in there, but to me, that's such a fascinating
Jurassic
tale.
World building.
Yes, that's great. But there is a Jurassic World prequel novel, but it's called. Let me find this. It's called. It's called The Evolution of Claire. And it's a prequel about a young Claire, Bryce Dallas Howard's character.
That's so funny.
Getting a summer internship at the park.
What's it called again?
The Evolution of Claire.
That is
Jurassic
tragic.
World.
That is a tragic title.
It's a young adult novel written by Tess Sharp.
Okay. Well, hey, is that our first part of our Jurassic Saga coverage, Richard?
Yeah, and then next week will be Jurassic Park Podcast B.
I thought you were going to keep talking. I was going to do the outro music. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. Hope you liked it. Let us know your thoughts on not only Jurassic Park, the trilogy, but our thoughts. Like, let us know your thoughts on our thoughts of the Jurassic Park trilogy. You can do that in a lot of ways, including joining the Discord, which there will be a link to in the show notes. You can also follow us or like us on Instagram or Twitter at ColdPopsha. You can email us at coldpopshamedia@gmail.com, and if you really want to finance us, much in the way John Hammond was trying to secure finances for his vision, you can do that by going to patreon.com/cultpopsha, where you too can tell us to redo Jurassic Park again next year if you want. So that's get involved if you want to get involved in that, and we'll see you next week for Jurassic World.
Roar! There you go.
Roar!
Roar! I've got the eye of the tiger.
Also, there's a post-credit scene. I forgot to mention that, but here it is. Welcome along, everybody, to the post-credit scene. This is a segment at the end of each episode where if you donate $5 or more over at patreon.com/coldpopsha, you get to give us something to talk about in this, the post-credit scene. Richard, who's it from and what is it?
This one comes to us from Joshua Cole, who says, your co-host has to either give you a large tattoo or a colonoscopy. Choose wisely.
What do you want? Presumably one of us can only have the other.
No, I think you can. I think we could both choose the same answer. I don't know. I think, like, you could probably design quite a fun tattoo, but it's whether or not I trust you with the tattoo gun.
Oh, well, you're not even considering colonoscopy.
So the colonoscopy is just the camera, right?
I guess so.
It's not like an actual surgery?
I don't want to make you look at my butthole, though.
Well, I want to make you look at my butthole. I just don't want you to stick a camera up it. You'd go too far. I don't trust you.
Okay, what would you give me?
I would trust myself to give you a tattoo.
Okay. Does it have to be a big tattoo?
It says large tattoo, yeah.
Okay. I want you to give me a tattoo that's just a line down my spine. Something that's real hard to fuck up.
Yeah, right. I feel like I wouldn't get it very straight. And
that's
on your
fine.
spine is probably pretty like...
It's probably pretty fucking painful, isn't it?
Fucking painful, yeah. Yeah. All right, well, I'm going to give you an incredibly... You can give me a colonoscopy if you want.
A line down my spine, now that I think it's very sexual as well. It's very like
pointing at your butt, so that when your next co-host has to give you a colonoscopy, they know where to stick it.
Yeah, exactly.